welcome to the Buddha's Boys YouTube channel. It's your boy Stufius, back again with the game of Age of Empires 2, playing as the Vietnamese against the Byzantines. So in this video I would like to discuss as to why I believe the Fire Lancer unit, the unit that was introduced with the Chinese DLC back in March or April of last year, is broken and needs a nerf. So a bit of a context, the game prior to this I lost to the Poles, so I was out for revenge. It seems like every time I play, my first game has to be a loss and then I have to climb back up and win my next game, but such is life. So in this second game I also played the Vietnamese, this time against the Byzantines. So during the loading screen, as soon as I saw Byzantines, I was nervous, to say the least. I hold Byzantines in very high regard. I think they're one of the best civs in the game. And as the game progresses, they become better. Their weakness is lack of an eco bonus in early and mid game, and the fact that they do struggle until they reach Castle Age, where they become an absolute powerhouse. So when I saw that I was playing against the Byzantines, I actually didn't have a plan, not at least a pre-planned plan. While in the loading screen, I was thinking about what options I had and whether it be archers or trying to surprise them with knights, going for a unique unit. Any option that I could think of the way the Byzantines could counter me quite easily. And then at some point during Dark Age, I remembered, oh wait, I actually have the Fire Lancer, a unit that I never tried in ranked. I only tried it against the AI. Apparently it's broken. Well, let's see if I can make it work. So the Fire Lancer was introduced with the Chinese DLC last year, and in all essence it's kind of like an anti-trash unit with stats and or bonuses that help it deal against trash units. You can think of it as a spearman with better stats that doesn't have the negative drawback of a spearman, primarily the spearman armor debuff, so to say, where the spearman takes additional damage from things like skirmishers and archers. So essentially the Fire Lancer is a tankier spearman without the drawbacks of a spearman and with better stats. It's kind of like in between of a spearman and the militia unit. Now on paper, I don't think that the Fire Lancer is an overpowered unit per se. Some may disagree. Some believe that it's overpowered regardless of what everything else I'm going to say. I'm not so sure about that. I'm okay with the unit being better than another unit if it either costs more or is tougher to tech into. So just because it has better stats than a spearman, I don't think makes it necessarily broken, especially due to the fact that it costs gold. It's not a trash unit, so I wouldn't necessarily call it broken in that regard. But what makes it broken is, in my opinion, it's broken because of one single fact, and that it's the only infantry thus far in the game, or in the history of the game, that does not cost food. So what's the problem with it? So essentially, the Fire Lancer has similarities to the Eagle. Similar to the Eagle, it replaces a few roles. As you know, the Mazo Civs don't have cavalry, so the Eagle ends up having to do multiple roles. On one hand, it's fast, and it replaces cavalry in that regard. It has high pierce armor, so it has elements of a knight that has 2 pierce armor by default, but it also resists conversions for monks, which takes elements from the light cavalry, which have additional resistance to conversion against monks. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1 package. It's their replacement for a cavalry. Yet I've never heard anyone, or I never heard a lot of people claim that it's broken just because it fulfills multiple roles. And one of the reasons for that is that it gets countered by the most basic unit in the game that everyone has, and that's the militia line, or the swordsman line, however you want to call it. Every civ in the game has it, so every civ in the game has the potential to counter the Eagle Warrior. You don't need anything special, you don't need a unique unit, you don't need a specific tech. Basically, everyone has tanks DE, as T90 would say. I shift-clicked the villager and he, simply did not do that. I had to do it again. So, just because the eagle fulfills multiple roles, I don't think it's broken. Similarly, the Fire Lancer is basically a tankier, more durable, better stat version of Spearman. So it's basically between a Spearman and the Swordsman line, kind of in between. And in itself, I don't think that is the problem. What is the problem is the fact that it doesn't cost food. So, thinking about this matchup, when I went to the game, in Dark Age, I could not for the life of me think a way of how to defeat the Byzantines. Like, everything I thought about, I was like, okay, the Byzantines can counter me. I've played Byzantines in ranked, I hold them in very high regard, and I'm thinking, as the game progresses, from Castle Age onwards, the Byzantines are just going to have an infinite, well, not an infinite advantage against me, but they're going to have an advantage just based on their civ. So I was thinking, what could I do? Don't ask me about the militia. I made so many mistakes in this game. Was quite nervous, partially due to the fact that I lost the previous game. I really don't like losing first games. Would be nice where I can actually come online, win my first game, and say, okay, I'm gonna end it on a win. But yeah, I guess that's not going to happen. I also failed here. Don't ask me. I pulled him back and then I misclicked or something and I sent him to his death. Yeah, so a lot of mistakes, and the mistakes are going to continue. So I decided somewhere in Dark Age, I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go for the Fire Lancer. A few videos ago, I uploaded a video of me losing. It was a Byzantine v Byzantine match. Sorry, Vietnamese versus Vietnamese match, and I lost that one. Even because the opponent went for Fire Lancers, I went for a unit that I thought would counter it, the Long Swordsman. I ended up losing because the opponent played better, and he definitely blindsided me as to what his intentions were, and I definitely could have and should have reacted better to the whole situation, but I didn't. The opponent won. Oh well. Let's move on. This entire feudal age was a complete mess by me. My opponent completely outplayed me in feudal. My only saving grace is that the level at which we play dictates that if one were to do this kind of aggression, he would suffer with the idle TC time. I think he totally killed 2 villagers. Let's ignore the fact as to how many he idled. Like, actually no, he killed it. He killed the third one because he chopped a tree that I did not tell him to chop. I told him to chop this one, but I guess there was not enough room, so he switched to this one. At this point, I was like, I was pretty tilted, to be perfectly honest. I thought, well, this is the end. What I didn't know is that because of this, he himself suffered economically by having some idle TC time. So his 3 will kills are more like 1, because the amount of idle TC is basically 2.5 wills. Yeah, actually no, it's basically 3 wills. So he killed 3 wills and idled a lot, so he really caused me problems with idling. Not the killing. The killing was bad enough. Losing 3 wills is bad enough, but idling all of the eco, yeah, that was particularly. That was maybe even worse than losing 3 wills, especially considering he had idle TC time equivalent almost to 3 whole wills. So his advantage was not 3 wills; it was basically 1 will, or even not a full will. Either way, my feudal was horrible. Was horrible. So somewhere in Castle, I decided, you know what? I don't have anything in my roster that I feel comfortable enough that would beat the Byzantines from Castle Age onwards, especially going into late game. Like everything I can do, they can do either better or they can just counter me more easily. So basically sent these soldiers to die, but to scout. so he can just scout through his base, so I would get as much intel as possible, because I foolishly lost a scout here, which was completely my mistake, or well played to the opponent. But yeah, so I sent the spearmen and the accidental militia that I created forward so I can get some vision. Midway through castle, I decided, you know what, this is the perfect opportunity. I remembered I had the Fire Lancer. I never tried the Fire Lancer. I heard it's broken. I lost to it in the video that I uploaded 2-3 weeks ago, where there was a mirror match between Vietnamese and Vietnamese, where I lost to the Vietnamese player who went for the Fire Lancer. So I decided, you know what, this is the perfect game at which I need to try. Why? So the Fire Lancer, it has more HP than a Spearman, especially if you're playing the Vietnamese, so you get the extra HP bonus for it. It has better stats than a Spearman. It doesn't have the penalty, so it's gonna beat his Spearman. So the Vietnamese, they're good at, especially good at one thing, and that's lower cost on cheap trash units. So if he goes Spearman, thinking maybe that I would go for cavalry, I just pick the Fire Lancer, and it has better stats than a Spearman, and beats the Spearman. If he thinks I'll go Knights and goes for camels, the Fire Lancer has bonus damage versus camels. It's not as big as the pikeman line in Castle Age, but it's enough. It's enough. This is where I would compare it to the Spearman by saying it's a more rounded Spearman. It's less specialized, so it's not as good against mounted units as the spear line, but it's better in different scenarios, where the Spearman line excels exclusively just against mounted units. The Fire Lancer excels it, or is more of a jack of all trades in a sense compared to the Spearman. So I decided, if I go archers, he can go for cheaper skirmishers, and my Fire Lancers, they have more HP than a Spearman, especially the Vietnamese ones, and it also, I believe, has more pierce armor, but Gambesons does affect it as well, although I'm Vietnamese and I don't get Gambesons. So what I did, I walled up. I tried to play similarly to how the Vietnamese player played against me when he beat me in that Vietnamese versus Vietnamese game. I purposefully created an archery range, trying to trick him into thinking that I was going to go the standard archer play because I'm Vietnamese. But I hid the 2 barracks in the back and quickly walled this when I saw his scout, because I thought he might try to put his scout in my base to see what I'm doing. I purposefully put the barracks back and started massing up the Fire Lancer. Maybe the TC was an overkill for this kind of strategy. In this kind of strategy, you would need less villagers on food and more on wood and gold, because the Fire Lancer costs wood and gold. Again, it's the only infantry in the game that doesn't require food. And this is where it comes. The infantry itself, the unit, may not be broken. Maybe with certain bonuses, like Vietnamese higher HP, the Jurchen one that hits faster, and the the Korean one that's cheaper on the wood cost. Maybe those, but as a unit, like a generic unit without any civ bonuses, I don't think it's broken. What makes it broken is the fact that it doesn't cost food. So let me try to explain. Nice play by my opponent there. Let's take a typical game. You enter Castle Age, you need food. So you need approximately 6 farms, let's say 6 farms per TC to produce enough food so that TC can produce villagers constantly without delay. In your standard Castle Age, you're gonna have at least 3 town centers. So that's 6 per town center. That means 18 farms per town center, just so that those town centers can produce the villagers necessary. Then you need most of the tax in game, whether that be eco tax, military upgrades, blacksmith upgrades, unit upgrades. Most of the things in the game that you can upgrade cost food, and most of the army types in the game, or army units I should say, cost food. So on top of those 18 farms, you're gonna need farms for units, upgrades, blacksmith upgrades, eco-techs, everything that's not units. Basically everything that's not units, and most of the unit roster. That's a lot of food. Just to sustain army production and villager production. But in Castle Age, you need a lot of food to get to Imperial, so you don't fall back. You need a lot of food. But if you invest your food in military and upgrades and techs and villagers, it's gonna be hard getting to that Imperial Age. Well, if you go for the Fire Lancer, that completely negates the whole thing. So I saw him going for camels. I guess he thought I was gonna secretly go for knights, and he wanted to surprise me with the camels. The Fire Lancers just destroy the camels. Like it's a no contest. Obviously they're not as good as pikemen, because pikemen have a higher bonus damage. That's where the pikeman specializes against mountain units. But the Fire Lancer is more than good enough to defeat, especially the Vietnamese one that has extra HP. So I just ran through. I did a siege push, or forward siege workshop, which is rare for me, but hey, finally I'm doing it instead of the opponent, right? And I ran in and caused a lot of damage. So killed 10 vills, and probably a few more will die, I hope. I ended up losing this army, which was not the best use of an army that I ever had, but at the end of the day, they did the damage. They killed 10 plus vills, but arguably even more importantly, they idled a lot of eco. One wood line, the main gold, decent number of farms. At the end of the day, they did their job. They evened out the playing field when it comes to eco. And this investment, where he tried to, I guess, the mind games, where he tried to mind game win with the camels, ended up not working, thankfully for me. So yeah, back to the Fire Lancer. So all of those situations in a regular scenario where you need 18 farms for 3 TCs, plus the upgrades, the techs, the units, and all of that, is completely negated if you go for the Fire Lancer. You would need 6 farms per town center, and usually in these kind of games you are reluctant to add the town center, at least not immediately, and definitely not 2 at the beginning of Castle Age. But you send a lot of villagers, few villagers on food, a lot fewer, while a lot of villagers are sent on wood and gold, because those are the 2 resources you need to produce the Fire Lancer. And the Fire Lancer, this is basically the perfect example, the perfect game for a Fire Lancer. As I said, it's basically an anti-trash unit. It defeats spearmen because it has better stats. It defeats skirmishers because extra armor. It doesn't have more HP, but it doesn't have more pierce armor, but it has extra HP. So it defeats the skirmishers based on that, and it defeats cavalry, including camels, because of the bonus damage. So it basically defeats almost the entire Byzantine roster in Castle Age. So the Byzantines are known for cheap trash units, camels, skirmishers, and spearmen. And this one unit shuts them down completely. They basically, I think they maybe have like realistically 3 options. One would be crossbows, but I'm Vietnamese, so kind of anti-crossbow play is my specialty, and I don't think they're as good as people think. I would say they're the worst of the 3 viable counters to the Fire Lancer. The 2 other would be cataphracts, which have a bonus against infantry. That's great and all, but getting to cataphracts or any other unique unit is not easy, and takes time, a castle, a lot of investment, and all of that. And if I spot that in advance, I could have a good chance at negating that and going for a counter unit myself. The other option, the one that should technically work would be the swordsman line, going for long swords in Castle Age, even though the Byzantines don't get a good long swords. That's probably the best bet, I would say, had he known in advance that I was going for this. So if you look, this has similarities to the game that I lost against the Vietnamese player going for this unit, where I did go for long swords. I was late to the transition, very late, but even then, even though I was late, I couldn't mass them up, and I just lost based on sheer numbers. So he had to have known that I was going for this unit, and then prepare in advance the swordsman line so he can survive in Castle Age and then see where the game takes us post castle. He opted for camels. Obviously, he thought I was going to go for knights. Unfortunately for him, that ended up not being the case. But this is where this unit actually shines. It's basically the perfect scenario. I'm playing against a civ that's known for thrash units. For cheap thrash units and camels. Literally the perfect scenario at which you can use the Fire Lancer because it counters all thrash units and even to a good degree mounted units of any sort because of the similar bonus to the pikeman, although the bonus is weaker. And I'm playing against Byzantines that are known for cheap thrash units. Like I said, perfect scenario. And this allowed me to go to Imperial Age quicker than him with a better eco. Because all of these farms, I don't have that many, let's be honest. 31 farms, not a lot. Okay, he has even fewer farms. But this is not a lot of farms for going into Imp. I probably even overdid the farms for this kind of strategy. But all of this food that I gathered, I did not need to spend on military. All of these units, God knows how many Fire Lances I created over the course of this game up until this point, like 50. Each one of them would have cost some food. None of them cost food because they're the Fire Lancer. All of that food ended up being collected and going into Imperial, and thus faster Imperial timing. That's where I think this strat is broken. The unit itself I don't think is broken. What I think is broken is the fact that it doesn't cost food. So all of the allocated and collected food over the course of Castle Age can be transferred to Imperial Age, to i.e. a faster Imperial timing, which will give you a massive tech advantage like I'm doing here with the Trebs, and getting the elite Fire Lancer quicker on the field. I think this is something they would need to fix. This unit, in combination with not costing food, is, I believe, too strong. Because you can go for a unit that counters... Essentially, the opponent needs to know that I'm doing this. Go for long swordsman, unless you're the Jurchens, they don't have the long swordsman. Go for the long swordsman to basically survive in castle, and then on top of that, then he needs to prepare for Imperial, where he would expect me to change into something that would counter the long swordsman, and then win based on that, while being enclosed in his own base and not being able to see the counter unit that I'm going. Yeah, I feel like that's a major advantage for the guy going Fire Lancers. I mean, I'm happy about the win and everything, especially because I lost the previous game, but I genuinely felt bad at winning this game. Like, I felt like, okay, sure, on one hand, I'm happy that I realized that, oh, okay, I'm playing against a civ that from Castle Age and beyond is better than my civ, and the longer the game prolongs, the better chance the Byzantines have winning, and recognizing that they're weaker mid-game is the point at which I either need to beat them or at least inflict enough damage to the point I can win the game. And he had skirmishers, they're not gonna do anything. 102 HP of these Vietnamese, they're not gonna do. They're basically tickling the Fire Lancer, and he surrenders. So I'm proud that I was able to see the situation and to use the unit for the first time in a situation where I think it shines the most. It's, like I said, basically the best case scenario for this unit. I had a bad Dark Age. I got completely outplayed in Feudal Age. Fair play to the opponent, killing 3 villas with Byzantine scouts. He completely out-microed me in my own base in front of my own men and women. And I thought I was dead there. I guess the turning point of the game was him trying to do the 200 IQ move and blindly going for camels, even though the only thing he saw was a barracks and the archery range, which I placed here to essentially be fake. He couldn't see the 2 barracks that I hid in the center of my base, outside of line of sight, or far away from the walls. But that point at which the camels clashed with the Fire Lancer was... that was probably the turning point of the game. It allowed me to just stream roll through his base and gain an advantage, at which point I never looked back. So this unit, how to fix it? Well, I think that maybe certain bonuses for the unit should be nerfed. Maybe the Vietnamese plus 20% HP should not apply to this unit. Maybe the Jurchen faster attacking bonus should not apply to this unit, and maybe I don't know about the Koreans, but maybe the Korean bonus should also not apply to the Fire Lancer. And in that case, I don't think the unit is broken. Look at this. I did all of this with 23 farms. Well, 30 farms, but apparently only 23 are working. Yeah, that's double this amount. Like 50 to 60 farms is probably the bare minimum any other civ would need to, or any other tactic would need to actually implement. This is... yeah, look at how many on gold. I even did use this gold. I completely used this gold. Wood lines, all of 4 wood lines. Yeah, this is the problem. The fact that it doesn't cost food makes it, first of all, it's easier to collect wood and gold in mid game. The food aspect needs to pay off. The farms need to pay off, and it takes time. And you need food for basically everything else, from techs, upgrades, units, blacksmith, anything. Basically, you can go for this unit and then just collect, store the food, so you have a faster imperial time, which will give you a substantial eco advantage. A tech advantage, at which point there's probably, or there might not be a way back in for the opponent, who needed to spend all of that food on units, on a specific unit, no less, the longsword, just to have a chance at surviving the Fire Lancer. And for all of that, he needed to see what I was going for and to counter me, to start preparing on time. So this unit definitely, that aspect, the fact that it doesn't require food, is, I think, the biggest problem. And it has been a problem for some time since the unit was introduced, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem as more and more people figure out why it's so strong. I'm sure this video won't help that cause, let's be honest. But yeah, that was basically the game I wanted to show. Can't say that I'm really proud of this game. Even killed more military. He had more kills than I did. Can't say that I'm particularly proud about this win. I mean, I essentially used a broken unit in the best case scenario against a civ where in mid game this is the bane of their existence. Like literally, if you think about Byzantines, their worst case scenario is facing massed eagles or massed fire lancers in mid game, where they need to go for their long swordsmen, which do not scale well into the game, and needing to go for the unique unit, the cataphracts. But yeah, going for a unique unit in mid game, where you need a castle, you need a lot of investment, you need a lot of worker time to get the stone, to create the castle, and then to have the eco to produce enough of the unique unit to where they can match the opponent's army. It is not easy. So that would be it for this replay. It was more of a showcase, and hopefully not too big of a rant about why I think the Fire Lancer is a broken unit and why it needs not necessarily a nerf, but I mean a nerf, but not in a standard sense. I don't think its stats need to be changed. I think it needs to be changed as to the resources that you need in order to go for it. That I think is the biggest problem. Maybe just reverting it to where it needs gold and food would solve the issue. That would be probably the most simplest way of addressing the issue, but one way or the other I think the unit needs to be addressed. And its biggest problem, the fact that it doesn't cost food, is probably the best way to address the issue. Well, that will be it for this game. Thank you for watching. If you have any critiques, recommendations, or anything else that you would like to add to the discussion about the Fire Lancer unit or anything else that I discussed in this video, please leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next one.